It is amazing to think how we actually got here. Sitting up here wearing robes, shaven head, this environment, where each of us, how do we actually get to this place in this time? How did our lives turn out like this? This is not what we expected when we were kids. This is not what we expected when we were teenagers, most of us. It's amazing. And here we are. And we're in this retreat, in this sesshin, diligently investigating the nature of mind. And we all have an intention, a hope. We all have an aspiration in our hearts. And that aspiration is for the good, for clarity, for understanding, for wisdom, for understanding our place in the world, for understanding the deep fundamental truths. It's all there. And here we are. And we have talks like this periodically, as you know, every day. And the function of the talks is to hopefully inspire and hopefully open the possibility of awakening, and to encourage each person to, in their capacity, in their aspiration for awakening. And so in that case, sometimes there's different kinds of teachings, because the path is not just a linear one-way path, it's a mandala. There's many different dimensions to it. And sometimes the dimension we talk about is that of equanimity and calmness. And sometimes the dimension is of there's nothing to do, everything is right here. And sometimes the dimension is it takes a really lot of hard work. And sometimes the dimension is that everything is right here, right now. The path is short, it's immediate awakening. And sometimes we take the view of it's a long, endless path that requires intense devotion, dedication. And sometimes we take the view that it's an ethical foundation, it's integrity that is the most important thing. And then sometimes we take the view of it's really the bodhisattva vow to help others, even if you may not be a total idiot, to have the aspiration to be a benefit to others. There's many different aspects, many different ways we can talk about the Dharma. We're using the Platform Sutra, the sixth ancestor of China's teaching. Good knowing advisor. When you contemplate, and he's talking to all of us, of course, we're the advisors he's talking to. When you contemplate and illuminate with the wisdom which brightly penetrates within and without, you recognize your original mind. When you contemplate and illuminate the wisdom with the wisdom which brightly penetrates within and without, you recognize your original mind. Sounds nice, but what does that mean? How do we do that? You can say anything, and that's one of the things that is confusing, is we go to the library and people from every kind of state of mind, every level of aspiration or non-aspiration, every level of attainment or non-attainment, write books. And they all use, the ones that we read at least, by and large, are in English. And they all use English, and they all have formed with complete sentences. But there are people who can write from deep personal experience. And one of the ways that we can tell that is, does it resonate with something in our heart, something in us? And sometimes when we have these ancient texts, this text is ancient, it has to be given life to with the current commentary. So, it's talking to all of us, and it says to each one of us, when we actually look at the world with the wisdom which is already within your own mind, you look at the world with the wisdom which is already perfuses your being, then right there you recognize your original, your true nature. But it still begets the question of how. How do we do that? He goes on, the recognition of your original mind is the original liberation. the attainment of liberation is prajna samadhi, is no thought. What is meant by no thought? No thought means to view all dharmas with a mind undefiled by attachment. Now, it's interesting to note that definition. No thought, in this text, means to view all dharmas with a mind undefiled by attachment. It doesn't mean a blank, empty mind. Because, the mind is, occasionally we have periods of deep, complete stillness. Nothing is moving, but that's temporary, because all things change. But to see no thought means a view all dharmas with a mind undefiled by attachment. And what's attachment? Clinging, grasping, I want. And that means that when we're looking around the room and we see people, we say, oh, that's a lovely person. Oh, that's a handsome person. Oh, that's a person I really like to go see. Well, that's a person I really would rather avoid. Oh, I'm kind of hard. My heart hardens when I see them. Oh, I really would. That's attachment, that moving toward and away from, where we're constantly at the mercy of our thinking. The mercy of our thinking, not the heart. It's a different level of karmic connection. So no thought means to view all things, all dharmas. Dharmas means things in this context, with an awareness undefiled by attachment. The function pervades all places but is nowhere attached. That is the function of awareness, the function of mind, the function of our true nature. And I talked a couple of days ago where Jogan talked about the difference between, they often use mind in these texts, and they confuse that with thought. That somehow how we think is mind, or the thoughts are mind. But mind in this context is awareness itself, the fundamental isness of things, which is before thought. It perfuses all things, but for this purpose, we're talking about thought. That's very different than talking about the nature of mind. The function of the nature of mind pervades all places, but is nowhere attached. It's nowhere found. Merely purify your original mind and cause the six consciousnesses, the six senses, to go out in the six gates and be undefiled. And, basically just says, six senses, we have many senses. We have many more than six senses. But the six kind of classic senses are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking, are all the six senses. And the six gates are basically the eye that sees, the nose that smells, the mouth that tastes, and so on and so forth. And they say that there are 18 dhatus. It's just basically the six senses, the six activities, and the six objects of those six senses all compose 18. It's irrelevant. Purify, see, rest in your original mind, your original awareness. Recognize that, and all the senses are also purified and come and go freely and can be penetrated without obstruction. This is the prajna samadhi and freedom and liberation. This is the practice of no thought. So again, we read these kind of texts, and this obviously is translated by an academician. It has that flavor. It wouldn't have gone down in history as a profound text with that flavor, because there's lots of texts out there that talk about these things, and some of them talk about it with some juice, and some of them talk about it with kind of a dry way, as though it's not done with the mind, not with the heart. So he says, the sixth ancestor in this particular portion of the sutra, he says this stuff very blithely. And we read lots of Dharma teachers who say, just see the emptiness of all things, or see all things are flowing, everything is fluid. Or Dogen says, think of not thinking. What kind of thinking is this? Non-thinking, that piece from the Ginjo Koan. And frankly, that stuff is not helpful. It's not helpful. You know, you sit around, you contemplate those kind of things, and you can contemplate them, and you can even contemplate, I recognize my own true nature. It's not helpful. And scholars and philosophers have spent lifetimes writing books and treatises and dissertations on original mind, and who has it, and how to define it, and can it be measured or accessed, or does someone understand or not understand it? Maybe we should give a person a PhD because of what they wrote about original mind. This isn't, in terms of liberation, in terms of the juice of practice, in terms of the juice of the heart, in terms of the fluidity of our life, it's not so helpful. Especially when we're here at a retreat, and the foundation of a retreat is the visceral experience of life, the visceral experience of the body being breathed, the visceral experience. And that visceral experience is all too often obscured. It's even more obscured if we're reading a lot and reading things that get the mind stirred up in that philosophic way, which we've all done. I certainly have done many times. There's a famous story of a professor who went to a Zen teacher in Japan, and the teacher, he asked him to teach him. The professor asked the teacher to give him some instruction. And the teacher said, "Come, let's have tea. Let's have tea." And those of you who've been to Japanese tea ceremony know it's a very formal thing, and I'm sure it was probably an informal view where they made matcha or they shared tea. And the professor held out his cup to receive tea. And the teacher, the professor, the master, started pouring tea into his cup and poured it until it overflowed, until it was flowing down over his hands into the carpet. And the professor was obviously kind of shocked. "Stop, what are you doing?" The master said, "You know, your mind is exactly like this. When it's so full, you can't put anything else in. When it's so full, there's nothing you can see because you know so much. And so practice is, we've got to empty the teacup out. We've got to empty the conceptual mind out, not empty the functioning of the mind. We want the functioning to be sharp and clear and bright, but we want to empty the conceptual overlay that we have about reality." And how do we do that? How do we come to a visceral, direct experience, engagement with our lives, a responsiveness to our life, without a suffering-causing conceptual overlay, without a suffering-causing cocoon, without a suffering-causing barrier? That's what practice is about. It's doing that. And so everyone here has their practice of what is the object of your focus, what is the object of your concentration. If we don't have an object of our concentration, if we can't say, my object is, then the mind tends to wander around. It's kind of speculating on things and looking here and looking there, and enjoying this and enjoying that. The mind keeps bouncing around. The virtue of knowing what a practice is and saying, okay, I'm coming back to this. I'm coming back to feeling the body breathing itself. I'm coming back to counting breath. I'm coming back to the koan mu. I'm coming back to the sensation of my hands. I'm coming back to one anchor so that I can exercise the direct experience of that unmediated by all my opinions about the rest of the world. That I can exercise my direct apperception of my life through this concentration. Because when we don't have something to concentrate on, again, we just keep bouncing away, bouncing away, bouncing away. And so the first, I don't know, maybe 10 years practice, 20 years of practice, 40 years of practice, I don't know, is to really help the mind to be where we are, to be in harmony with what we are. And certainly after we practice a few days like this, none of us are that proficient, but we take some steps in that way of this direct, visceral engagement with our life. When we have a superficial understanding, when a real spiritual crisis comes along, it will not help. And what's a real spiritual crisis? A real spiritual crisis are those things that come unexpectedly, those things where something that we have been depending upon are suddenly ripped away, something that we felt that we had a hold on, an understanding of, and suddenly we find that it's not true. I was looking through a lovely book, 3 Pillars of Zen, from my first teacher, Philip Kapleau. And in it there are a number of people's awakening experiences. And so here's one person who says, although I was born into a family of the Soto Zen sect, I was 28 before I formally started practice. What led me to take this step was the fear of death. I began to spit blood after contracting tuberculosis, and the uncertainties had begun to plague me about life itself. In the old days, tuberculosis was basically a death sentence before antibiotics. Another person in here said they had a wonderful childhood in in Austria. Wonderful childhood. They were parents who were well off, they were well respected, they really were appreciated by the community, they had many good friends, and then Hitler came to power. And then they were, during the Kristallnacht, not the Crystal Night, when the Gestapo just went mad and destroyed Jewish businesses and homes all over Austria and Russia, or Austria and Germany. Her father was beaten and taken away to a concentration camp. They lost their mother. They escaped Nazi Germany, and suddenly they were plagued with the unpredictability and the dangerousness, the possibility of the world falling apart. They had had this wonderful life. They thought that we always predict our wonderful life is going to continue, but then something came into power and swept the whole thing away. And it shocked them to the bone as a young person. And so in their heart, after that shock, was this question, what is it? What is it? What's alive? What's the meaning of life? Or someone else some people work hard. They have a sinecure. They work hard. They really feel like they've been engaged in something, and then suddenly everything they work for just gets defunded or gets taken apart or gets forgotten, or they get fired, and suddenly all that they had put their heart energy into, what happened to it all? Where did it all go? What's left? Or in our case, we discover a lump. People get fired. Federal government falls apart. Something happens. Something happens. And what is touched is that deep existential angst, that deep existential concern that we are not secure. We are not safe. It could all fall apart in a moment. It will fall apart. There is no safety in the future because it will fall apart. Or get defunded or get sick or disappear. Or we could have had a very successful life and we are retired and suddenly we say, what am I going to do now? All that my life gave me meaning, raising children, relationship. Well, now what? You know, my old work is not there anymore. What's my life about now? Do I just sit around waiting to die? Just sit around and play video games until I can't, and I'll pass out? It is these kind of crises, this kind of gnawing insecurity at the heart of the matter, which is all the mystics say can be transformed into wisdom, can be transformed into liberation, and it is this burning discomfort, disharmony, this burning question that to one degree or another, everybody touches now, and to one degree or another, everybody will touch in their life. This is the foundation of the spiritual path. It is the entrance gate to liberation, to freedom and satisfaction. And so, a basic principle of all Dharma, all teaching, is everything is an opportunity. Everybody's familiar with the Chinese hexagram about crisis and opportunity. It can be read two ways. One way means crisis, one way means an opportunity. And all the disturbances that are happening in our particular North American culture right now, they're an opportunity. They're an opportunity to see beyond what we thought was true and reliable. To see beyond so we can discover for ourselves and know for ourselves and be awakened in our own direct heart the truths that all the mystics, not all, most of the mystics, because all is not a good word to use, most mystics say is at the root of life. Everything is okay. Everything has its place. The nature of mind is inclusive. The nature of mind is not separate. That there is a profound aliveness wherever we are. And that profound aliveness can touch and be touched by things inside, things outside, things up, things down, things that we're working on, things we're faced with one way or another. As we work on the path, in my mind, there are three basic aspects to it. We've got calm abiding, samatha, tranquility, equanimity, being really okay with the way things are. It is essential, it is vital. We have to, it is, have to is not quite the right word, but it is a very, very vital part of the path. Whether it comes kind of first or second is not so consequential. But we have to find the ability to be equanimous, to be one with the way things are. We have to learn not to be at the mercy of this crazy mind, which is full of criticism and doubt and judgment and hesitation. And I mean, it's really essential. We have to learn how to do that, how to have a healthy relationship with thought, healthy relationship with our own background. We have to come to some resolution within ourselves. If we just do that, we are freed from many of the diseases of the mind. We are freed from from much of the friction that an ordinary life has, that we have some tranquility, equanimity, some clarity. Great. May it grow ever deeper. May we have more of that. Another dimension is this restlessness. At the core, often, there is still doubt. There is still an existential angst about the nature of life. We know that tranquility and equanimity, no matter how strongly we feel it, we know that there are forces in the world that could shatter it. And so, even though we may feel calm and equanimous and successful and have some some clarity, we know there's a fragility about that. There's still some fear, anxiety, mild unrest, or deep angst. An existential crisis, perhaps an existential crisis about the nature of the world. All things end, everybody suffers. Perhaps in the nature of the existential crisis of the people around us that we see, shooting themselves in the feet over and over again, causing themselves suffering over and over again, watching ourselves cause ourselves suffering over and over and over again, and thinking, is there an end to this? Whatever the existential queries are at the root, the fear, the anxiety, the unrest, the dis-ease at the root, down in our hearts. That is the next facet of practice, is to really deeply, deeply address that. With some people, it's the kind of unrest and dis-ease that we can ignore, that we can avoid, that we can, decide to take a vacation to Hawaii, South America, Asia, someplace. And in the excitement of seeing new things and being in new places, we forget. It goes away. But then we come back home and it's still there. What if? What if? What if? So this deep layer of the psyche, this unrest, is really beckoning us to a more fundamental freedom. It's beckoning us to pay attention to a more fundamental awakening. It's beckoning us to take the source of our life less and less from our ideas about how the world is into our direct experience of the arising of the world and things right here. This aspect of practice requires curiosity, requires investigation. And we can't do it with our mind. We can't just think, how do I do it? How do I do it? I'll do it this way, I'll do it that way. It requires a different kind. The way that we are approaching this particular question in this retreat, one of the ways, is by using sound. The experience of sound arising from the spacious nature of your own being points right to the source of all things. When we're listening to sound out there, the birds are out there, the wind is out there, the trees are out there, the traffic is out there, people are rustling out there. That doesn't lend itself to this intimate experience investigation. The intimate experience investigation is what hears? And where do I directly experience sound? As we all know, we experience sound with the body. We hear it at least with the tympanic membranes and the otic nerve, and it gets processed in the brain. We basically are hearing sound in our own brain. I always like that question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it exist? But without a brain processing it, there are no trees, there's no forest. There's no sound. If there's anything, there's just kind of a quivering, undifferentiated energy, which until it gets processed into trees or forests or sound, doesn't exist. one essential way of doing this investigation is deep listening, really listening right at the core, listening to everything. You can even listen to the source of thought. Deep listening, this deep, concentrated listening. For some people, that's a very satisfying practice. And please, continue. What is the source of sound? What hears sound? I mean, how do I even know there is such a thing as sound? It's a really interesting question. If we're right in the middle of sound, do you actually hear sound? Investigate it. We're separated, and we're listening to something, of course, there's lots of sounds. But when we're right at the middle of sound, and sound is right, we are sound, is there a sound? Curious place to investigate. The classic way that people have approached this question is with using those fundamental koans, these fundamental inquiries. We know that we're alive. Everyone here knows they're sitting right here. I sure hope you do. And that consciousness that is right here, well, where was it before you were born? Did the consciousness that you have right now, did it just pop out of nowhere? Did it not exist and suddenly it existed? Can you verify that consciousness didn't exist? Is there any way of verifying it never existed? Is there any way of verifying that it might actually end? This consciousness, this awareness itself. Now, when we talk about consciousness, again, language gets mixed up because we can be conscious of a human being. Consciousness is one of the aspects, conscious of a self. That's fine. But we're talking here about kind of the essential awareness, the essential quality of awareness without an object. In the Chinese tradition, the Japanese tradition, the koan of Mu, or sound of one hand, or pace before parents are born, has been a way of focusing, distilling, kind of pointing that question. So let me talk a little bit about the koan Mu, which is relevant for some of you and not so relevant for others of you. But if it's relevant, I invite you to jump on. So in the Mu Koan, one of the classic texts of Zen Buddhism, the first case is a case called Mu, and the case reads something like, a monk in all seriousness went to the great master Joshu and said, "Is it true that even such a lowly thing as a dog has a Buddha nature?" And the dogs were considered, basically vermin, like rats. So is it true that even such a lowly thing as a vermin has a Buddha nature? Now the question, of course, is also predicated on, well, we say all the time in Dharma that everybody is whole and complete, everybody has a Buddha nature, everybody has a true nature, everybody the Buddha mind is part of who we are. And this monk said, well, if that's true, is even rats, are they too, do they have a Buddha nature? And he goes and asks this question with some seriousness, some intention of the great master Joshu. And Joshu replies, no. Now other times, Joshu replies, yes. So it's not about no or yes. Rather, in this particular case, he is using the Mu. Mu is the Chinese, Japanese no. He's using the Mu, the sound of the Mu, the experience of the Mu, the presence of the Mu, as a direct pointing. You wonder about that nature? Look here, right here. And so we use that query, that what is, and it's so hard to say, what is it? What is the profound nature of things? What is the origin? What is the sort? We just boil all those questions down into this nonsense word, Mu. Mu is an object of concentration. It's an object of investigation. It's a manifestation. And it has no particular rational components to it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but the working on Mu is not about understanding. It's about being able to penetrate and to know what is my original nature. What is this expression? And so we use, when Guagu was here, he talked a lot about Wados. They use a point, a single word, as a way of giving the mind something to hang on to, giving the mind something to fasten onto. And the way that people work on the koan Mu is by repeating Mu, Mu, easy to say, Mu. Everybody can say Mu, 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 Mu. But in that saying of Mu, to look into where is it coming from? Where is it coming from? What's it partake of? Everything is made of something else. What is the essential nature made of? And so the way that is generally practiced is Mu, Mu, with focused intensity, just like we were doing toning, with focused intention. Now, when we're making a sound and we're working with Mu, and we're looking, where does it come from? And you're sitting there, you're feeling the word Mu, you feel that Mu, you feel the body making that sound, or the mind making that sound, Mu. And you realize, Mu. It doesn't particularly have a location. It's actually your whole body. Your whole body is this Mu. So the Mu is, you turn all of your thoughts of the past, all of your thoughts of the future, and you turn them in to the direct experience of Mu. Could be what, could be who, but in this case, Mu, or the Chinese is Wu. Not rational, very experiential. This is what in the Mu Koan. Mu Koan was a Chinese master in the 700s, maybe CE, who compiled this particular collection of koans. And there's a number of collections of koans. There are traditionally 1,700 koans. People who are working on with a teacher of a certain who uses koans, there's whole sequences that you go through. Mu Koan, Blue Cliff Record, Book of Serenity, Precepts, the the Rinzai Roku, and some others, depending on which school has different. But the Mu Koan is always considered a foundation, Mu Koan, Blue Cliff Records. And they are spiritual classics, absolutely spiritual classics. But each case is a case to say, well, can you penetrate into this? And sometimes they'll ask about causation, sometimes they'll ask about the isness of this thing, sometimes they'll ask about the non-existence of things, sometimes they'll ask about the rational, the irrational. And the idea is, with working with a koan, is you're able to see into and through the circumstances, into the oneness of all things, into that direct pointing that Mu takes. Mu is pointing to an experience that is inclusive, that is not separate, that is the Mu knowing itself. So the Master Mu Koan, who put together these 48 cases, and they've been used, for hundreds of years, put this one as the very first case, the first one, which was aimed at helping people to break through the conceptual mind, to have a visceral, direct knowing of who they were beyond their identity, beyond their particular circumstance. Here's what Mu Koan says about this, classic commentary. In studying Zen, one must pass the barriers set up by the ancient Zen masters. For the attainment of incomparable awakening, one has to cast away the discriminating mind. I think rather than casting away, I think going beyond it is probably a better word. Those who have not passed the barrier and have not cast away the discriminating mind are all phantoms, haunting trees and plants. Now tell me, what is the barrier of the Zen masters? Just this Mu. It is the barrier of Zen. It is thus called the gateless barrier of Zen. Mu Koan means the gateless gate. And the gateless gate, the gate referred to in the ancient days, certainly in China, all the cities had a city gate. So in order to get into the city, you had to pass through the gate, which probably had customs or ice or tariffs or something at the gate. So this is the gate. These are the gates to enter the realm of true reality. Thus it is called the gateless barrier of Zen. Those who have passed the barrier will not only see Joshu clearly, Joshu the teacher, clearly, but will go hand in hand with all the masters of the past and see them face to face. You will see with the same eye that they see, hear with the same ear. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Don't you want to pass this barrier? Then concentrate yourself on this Mu with your 360 bones and 84,000 pores. It's not an accurate count, so don't worry about it. Making your whole body into one great inquiry. Day and night, work intently at it. Do not attempt nihilistic or dualistic interpretations. It's like having having swallowed a red-hot iron ball. You try to vomit it, but cannot. He continues, cast away your illusory, discriminating knowledge and consciousness accumulated up to now, and keep on working harder. After a while, when your efforts come to fruition, all the oppositions in your life will naturally be clarified. You'll then be like a mute person who's had a wonderful dream, but they know it personally within themselves. Suddenly you break through the barrier and you will astonish the heaven and shake the earth. Goes on. So Mu can be a visceral with focus, with intention, with intensity. What is it? The what is it part is not the brain on top of the Mu. It's in the Mu itself, in the inquiry itself. I want to feel this so deeply. I want to feel this more closely. I want to really know, what is this experience I'm having? It's the experience. The root of the experience. What's the experience made of? It is with this kind of concentration that we actually turn away from the mind that just bops everywhere, from the mind that is constantly judging and making opinion and constantly, deflecting reality. To concentrate. Now we're using sound, and you can do the same thing with sound. It's a little bit harder. Sound is more peripatetic, it just sort of bounces around everywhere. And so you hear, oh, there's the bird out there, and there's the swishing of the robes over here, and there's the sound of my voice, and the microphones are over there, and the speakers are over there. So with sound, it's easier to kind of hear the peripheral location things that our brain does. Sound is always heard in the same place. It's always heard in the non-dual place of our own mind, our awareness. But it's often hard for people to flip from hearing it from the outside to hearing it from the inside. It's part of practice. We learn. Mu doesn't have that problem. So those of you who are inclined to do this, if you pick up the koan Mu, it has to be a relentless Mu. You come to Sanzen, your practice is Mu. You'll be asked to show Mu. You're walking, it's Mu. You're eating, it's Mu. The fundamental existential question is with you. It can be there day and night. It is a different level of practice than calm abiding. It's a different kind of practice. Those of you who are familiar with the elephant path that we've got, there's the elephant path tanka in the office. The nine-curved elephant path is the 9 curves of the elephant, the mind, coming up to samatha, up to clarity. But beyond that is inquiry. So samatha and vipassana, for other terms. This is the vipassana piece, the inquiry piece, in this particular way that we've done it in the Zen tradition. Let's go back to Hui Nang for a moment. So Hui Nang was according to the beginning part of the Platform Sutra, and as Inryu said, it's a very compelling sutra, a very compelling story. And I'm sure that the story is part of why the sutra has gone down over the millennia, because the story is so good. So here's somebody who had 2 parents. They were well off. They lived at ease. And suddenly something happened. I forgot, the father died, or he got thrown out of court, thrown out of the imperial court, and from a place of luxury and ease, suddenly they were totally impoverished. And he was doing whatever work he could do, gathering firewood. Now, you can imagine in even a small Chinese city, the forests were not right out there, 50 feet away. The forests are probably miles away. And how much firewood can one person carry if you have to walk 2 miles to get it and 2 miles back? How much? I mean, obviously, it's really hard work and probably pretty and a futile feeling to it. Because you carry a bunch of sticks back and then try to sell sticks and try to live in the sticks. You can imagine that somebody who had come from a stable, healthy background, and suddenly they were thrust into grinding labor and poverty. What kind of doubts were in their mind? What kind of agony was that person going through? What kind of what was happening as they were trudging back and forth, thinking about their old life and looking at this life, and this life just seemed to stretch forward forever. How do you ever get out of poverty? And when they were leaving a customer's house one day, they happened to hear a monk chanting the Diamond Sutra. Now, we've said 3 different things. We've said Prajnaparamita Sutra, Diamond Sutra, Heart Sutra. They're all part of the same collection. The Prajnaparamita is the bigger collection. In that, the Diamond Sutra is a smaller portion of that, and the Heart Sutra that we chant every day is a very succinct version. So they're all basically the same sutra. So he heard a monk chanting the Diamond Sutra, and what he heard was, arouse the mind without its abiding anywhere. Be alert without getting stuck. Just like Hui Nang is saying right up here at the beginning of this talk. No thought means to view all dharmas of the mind undefiled by attachment. Arouse the mind without him being attached to anything. And he heard that. So easy to say. Rouse the mind without it being attached to anything. But given the nature of his heart, the tension, the pressure that must have been there, really good background, suddenly kind of broken, poverty-stricken, grinding work. Something touched him. Something touched him. Something was recognized. Some fantasy delusion that he had was broken open. And he had a direct, vivid experience. We chant every day in the Heart Sutra, the Bodhisattva of compassion from the depths of prajna wisdom, saw the fluidity, saw the flow, saw the emptiness of all the 5 skandhas, all the dharmas, and was relieved from suffering. Same experience, different words. And this struck him so deeply. A transformative moment. And those transformative moments are possible in everybody's life. And many of us have had transformative moments where somehow the veil has been ripped apart and we've had a glimpse, we've seen something profound, something that is always present, something that is bright and clear and was not a matter of, of doubt at the time. And so he was so deeply touched by this. And then the story goes that he made provision for his mother. Somebody gave him some money to take care of his mother. And he walked 1,000 miles. Walked 1,000 miles to visit Master Hongren, the 5th ancestor. Kodo downtown told me once, when we had our place before we got Heart of Wisdom at the Portland Dharma Center, she walked 1,000 miles back and forth from her house to Heart of Wisdom, or her house to Portland Dharma Center. That's a long ways. What would compel someone? What would compel someone to do a trip like that? What possibly would compel us to undertake a pilgrimage that arduous? What's alive? What have we done that was arduous? I mean, we all have done things. We've done things that we felt alive about, that we felt this is really important. It's important beyond my particular small-minded comfort. It's important. The spiritual path is about that kind of level of importance. It's important in this crazy, crazy world to find something that is clear and light, something that is dependable, something that will offer solace for the agony that people feel, the fear, the terror that people feel. And so if someone touches that in their own heart, they have some little direct experience in it, there is a natural aspiration. Can I share this? Can I help? Can I help? When we really see that the suffering-causing mind is our mind and the mind of other people, and that there is a solution to the suffering-causing mind. It has a solution. We can solve it. We can help others solve it. Personally, I feel that is the best social action anybody can do. But we all have our own paths. To see beyond the suffering-causing mind into the realm of freedom, into the realm of inclusive nature of mind, into the realm of spontaneous arising and being pierced through with the vibrancy and the vivacity of this life. is part of the insights, part of awakening, part of the path. Not the end of the path. If we were the end of the path, it would be not a very good path. But it's got to be a step in the path. And that step is total verification. So that we can stand up in front of a group and talk with confidence and clarity about these fundamental issues. One of the tests that we all have to pass. So he walked 1,000 miles, and he had his encounter with Hogen, the fifth ancestor. If you've ever been to China, if you've seen how the monasteries work, you know, there's probably the teacher is sitting up on a high seat, and there may be been several hundred monks down there, and it's not easy, like if you were in this situation right here, not easy to say something to interact with the teacher, but he had enough bumptiousness or enough confidence or enough something that he caught the teacher's attention. And the teacher said, "Why are you here?" "I want to become a Buddha. I want to be a Buddha. I want to be awakened." Now it's interesting, right there, they still got some work to do, obviously. And then they had their exchange, and he went and worked in milling rice for several months. Awakening is possible. Awakening is possible. It must be embodied. And it's possible for each of us. And one of the ways it works, whether it's helpful to say things like this or not, I don't know, but when we are aligned with a koan of Mu, when we're aligned deeply and concentrated, and our ordinary mind is not putting up the barrier of this, you know, the smoke screen around us, then at any time something can pierce that barrier. A leaf falling. One of the great masters was sitting in a hut, and a thief came in and took everything that he had in the hut, including his clothes, I think, from the story. And suddenly he realized, oh, he couldn't take the moon. That which sees the moon is nobody can steal. Or Viktor Frankl in Auschwitz, he said, there is one thing that no one can take away from me. One thing that no one can take away from a human being, and that is our choice about our attitude toward what the things we face. Can't be stolen. Shinryu Suzuki from San Francisco Zen Center, you know, was practicing deeply. He was frustrated with practice as is part of the path. Frustration, making no progress. And one day he heard a bell, and it struck him to the core. And Hakuin had stayed up, Hakuin Zenji from the 1700s had stayed up all night, had been, and you know, session after session after session, was up all night and just staggering with fatigue, and his mind was blurry, and suddenly he heard a crow calling in the morning. Lots of stories. Awakening is possible. Awakening to our nature that is already here, that is before thought. If you want to know if you were born, you have to see what's alive. If you are clear, if you want to be clear about the issue of death, you have to see what's alive. When you see what's alive right now, you will know something profound about the nature of death. Please have deep respect for your own doubt, for your own unclarity, for that gnawing pressure in your guts or in your heart or in your chest. And deeply go into it without trying to get rid of it, without trying to make it something else. Saying, what is its nature? What is the nature of this? And the only way we can find out is to feel intimately, no separation. If you're working on Mu, 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 Mu. Right there. Right there.